A black Rolls-Royce Phantom plowed straight into my sidewalk grill. Two middle-aged people, dressed in silk and diamonds and bawling their eyes out, scrambled out of the wreckage and threw their arms around me, sobbing about their long-lost son. I was still clutching two half-raw skewers of spicy kidneys when they shoved me into the back of the limo. They told me I was the heir to the Montgomery empire, the real one, swapped at birth, and that I was now sitting on a 10 billion fortune. Back at their sprawling estate in the Hamptons, the fake heir Julian Montgomery caught me alone on the balcony. He handed me a custom-rolled cigarette, a predatory sneer twisting his handsome face. "Don't get too comfortable, brother," he hissed. "The only reason they brought you back is because I'm 50 million deep in gambling debt to some very scary people, and there's a federal indictment with my name on it that carries a 10-year minimum. My parents didn't want their golden boy behind bars. So, you're going to take the fall for me? You're going to carry the debt, and you're going to do the time in exchange. Well, you can eat like a king for the next week until the feds show up." I looked at the massive spread of lobster tail, Wagyu beef, and caviar on the dining table inside. Then back at this entitled prick who thought I was his sacrificial lamb. Dear time, I didn't say a word. I just took the half-cooked greasy kidney skewer I'd managed to smuggle in and jammed it into his mouth. "Eat up, Julian. You look a little frail. You're going to need the protein where you're going." So, the guys in Block C don't make you their personal assistant. The front of the Rolls-Royce that hit my cart was crumpled. My first thought wasn't about my destiny. It was about the deductible. How much did a bumper like that cost? Would it be enough to cover the loss of my customized Weber grill and my nightly earnings? My baby boy, a woman draped in Chanel, threw herself at me. Her perfume was so thick I nearly sneezed. She squeezed me so hard I thought my ribs would pop. I was still holding the raw skewers, the bamboo points inches from her Botox forehead. A man in a bespoke Italian suit, his eyes red-rimmed, gripped my shoulder. "Son, come home. You've suffered enough." Around us, the late-night crowd on my street corner pulled out their iPhones, the flashes strobing. Holy crap. Is this for real? A real-life prince and the pauper moment. Big Jack is going to be rich. I awkwardly pushed the woman back. "Ma'am, I think you've got the wrong guy. Also, you totaled my stand. The grill is toast." I pointed at the carnage on the pavement. Marinated lamb, chicken wings, and charred peppers everywhere. "Let's see. The custom rig is $3,500 in lost inventory, plus my projected tips for the night. Let's call it even at $5,000, and we'll call it a day." Arthur Montgomery, the man claiming to be my father, froze. Eleanor, the mother, stopped mid-sob and stared at me like I had just spoken in tongues. They forced me into the limo, anyway. The leather seats were so soft, I felt like I was sinking into a cloud. I found myself wondering if I could skin the upholstery to make a heavy-duty grill apron. It looked remarkably stain-resistant. We pulled into a gated estate that looked like something out of The Great Gatsby. Fountains, manicured lawns, and staff in crisp uniforms. As I stepped onto a rug so plush it swallowed my ankles, I couldn't help myself. "How much is this per square foot? You could buy a lot of brisket for the price of this hallway." The maid nearby stifled a laugh, looking terrified. A young man in a tailored suit and gold-rimmed glasses approached us. He was a catalog model, kind of handsome, but the look he gave me was the same one you give a bag of wet trash.
"Damn, Mom."
"So, this is my brother." Arthur nodded. "Julian, this is Jonathan." "The name's Jack Miller," I corrected. "Jonathan? Who's Jonathan?" Dinner was absurd. Bluefin tuna, Alaskan king crab, and a 5 Wagyu. I went to work like a man possessed, eating like it was my final meal on death row. Arthur and Eleanor sat across from me, droning on about legacy, bloodlines, and family duty. "Jonathan, now that you're back, you represent the Montgomery name. You have to think about the family first." "Exactly, sweetheart," Eleanor added. "The family is facing a small complication. We need you to step up." I had a mouthful of lobster. "How much does one of these bugs go for wholesale?" I mumbled. They both went silent. After dinner, Julian called me out to the terrace. He offered me a smoke, wearing a fake practice smile. Then he dropped the bomb. Don't get too comfortable, brother. The only reason they brought you back is because I'm 50 million deep in gambling debt, and there's a federal indictment with my name on it. My parents didn't want their golden boy behind bars. You're going to take the fall. In exchange, the food is on the house for a few days. I held the unlit cigarette in my mouth, watching his smug face. 50 million to who?
I asked. The mob.
He thought I was paralyzed by the number. He smirked. A number you couldn't count to in 3 lifetimes, Jack. I took the cigarette out and inspected it.
Nice.
Is this a Davidoff anyway? 50 million. What's the VIG? Daily or monthly? Can we restructure? What's the down payment? Julian's face went stiff. He clearly hadn't expected a street vendor to hear 50 million and immediately ask about the interest rates. What do you care? You're the one paying it. I felt nothing. Honestly, I almost wanted to laugh. 50 million and 10 years of my life. This family was delusional. The next morning, a woman found me. She was wearing a white couture dress. Her makeup flawless, radiating an aura of I'm more expensive than your life. As soon as she walked in, she covered her nose with a silk handkerchief. What is that smell? It's revolting. I sniffed my shirt. Human and smoke. I hadn't changed out of my work clothes yet. I liked the smell. I'm Tiffany Vanderbilt, Julian's fiancée, she said, her chin tilted high enough to be a safety hazard. I know who you are. Jack Miller, the guy who flips burgers in a parking lot, right? Her voice was dripping with condescension. People like you should consider it the ultimate blessing to even set foot in this house. I nodded in agreement. True. The lobster last night was top tier, very fresh. Tiffany twitched. She pulled a document out of a Birkin bag and slapped it on the table. Julian asked me to handle this. It's a trust succession agreement. Sign it, and you get a seat at the Montgomery table. I picked it up. Contracts. I dealt with city inspectors, shady suppliers, and predatory landlords for years. I knew how to read the fine print. Words like assume all liabilities, unconditional indemnity, and sole responsibility were scattered through the text like bad seasoning. It wasn't a trust agreement. It was a confession. I took this succession agreement and, right in front of her, used it to wipe the grease off my mouth from breakfast. Tiffany turned a sickly shade of green. You. I balled the paper up, tossed it into the trash, and looked her in the eye. Sweetheart, that perfume is a bit much. She blinked, stunned. It almost covers up the smell of human garbage. I finished. Jack Miller, how dare you? Tiffany was shaking with rage. She grabbed a glass of red wine from the side table and hurled it at me. I spent a decade dodging hot grease and batter spatters on a grill. My reflexes were sharp. I tilted my head, stepped an inch to the left, and splashed. The wine hit Julian full in the face as he walked through the door. His $5,000 suit was instantly ruined, dripping with dark red liquid. I immediately put on my best innocent face, looking devastated. Damn, Tiffany. I know Julian's been under a lot of stress lately, and maybe he isn't performing the way you'd like, but you don't have to humiliate him in public. A maid scrubbing the floor nearby let out a snort. Tiffany's face went from green to red to white. It was a spectacular light show. Julian wiped the wine from his eyes, looking like he wanted to commit a felony right there, but something held him back. He just glared at me. Jack Miller, you're going to regret that. He grabbed the fuming Tiffany and stomped out of the room. I went back to my bedroom and locked the door. I pulled my old leather fanny pack from under the bed and counted my cash. This family wanted a fall guy. Not a chance. But before I left, I was going to shear these sheep for every ounce of wool they had. Otherwise, the loss of my barbecue stand would be all for nothing. Since the stick didn't work, they tried the carrot. Late that night, there was a knock at my door. I figured it was the midnight snack I requested. But when I opened it, I found a woman in a sheer silk slip of a nightgown. She had a wide-eyed, innocent look like a startled fawn. I am Chloe Shinkler. I'm a friend of Julian's. She spoke softly, trying to edge her way into the room. I blocked the doorway. Can I help you? Chloe's eyes welled up with tears on command. Julian is just confused. He's under so much pressure. He didn't mean any of this. She started a long rehearsed sob story about how hard Julian's life was and how pure their love for each other was. "Please, Jack, just do this for us. Let's have our life together. Please." The plot was thinner than the cheap napkins I used at the stand. I pulled a handful of sunflower seeds out of my pocket and leaned against the door frame, cracking them and spitting the shells as she talked. "You finished?" I asked. Chloe froze. I spat a shell into the trash can by the door. "If you're done, go to bed. It's late." She panicked. She grabbed my arm, pressing herself against me. "Jack, if you agree to help him, I'll do anything for you. Anything." The smell of cheap vanilla perfume and heavy foundation hit me. I jumped back like I'd been stung. "Don't move," I shouted. Chloe jumped, paralyzed. I pointed at the bed sheets with a look of horror. "You just got your foundation all over the Egyptian cotton. This stuff looks expensive. If it doesn't come out, can you even afford the cleaning bill?" Chloe looked like she'd swallowed a fly. It was likely the first time in her life she'd been rejected for a laundry concern. I ignored her and went back to my logic. "You say you love Julian? You'd do anything for him?" She nodded instinctively. "He owes 50 million and he's looking at 10 years, I said. "If you love him that much, why don't you do the time? Why don't you pay the debt?" Chloe's face went bone white. She'd pegged me for a country bumpkin who'd be easily swayed by a pretty face and a few tears. Little did she know, I'd spent years in the city's night markets dealing with every kind of hustler and con artist imaginable. I slowly pulled my phone out of my pocket and hit play. "Please, Jack, just do this for us. Julian is just confused. He didn't mean any of this." The recording was crystal clear. Her entire confession of the conspiracy with Julian played back perfectly. Chloe's eyes filled with genuine terror this time. You recorded me?" I shook the phone at her, grinning. "Professional habit. When you sell ribs in an alley, you learn to keep receipts so people don't skip out on the bill." Chloe dropped the act, let out a frustrated shriek, and scrambled down the hallway. I shut the door and flopped onto the king-size bed. These high society women were a lot less satisfying than a slow-roasted eggplant dripping with garlic oil. The Montgomerys were hosting a massive gala. Officially, it was to introduce the rightful heir to the world. In reality, I knew they wanted to publicly pin the company's debt and the criminal charges on me in front of all their high-powered witnesses. The night of the party, the estate was crawling with 1% diamonds, tuxedos, and enough champagne to fill a swimming pool. I was wearing a rented suit that didn't fit right, and my old trusty flip-flops. I stuck out like a sore thumb. People looked at me with a mix of mockery and morbid curiosity. Halfway through the night, Arthur Montgomery took the stage and grabbed the mic. He gave a tearful speech about the hardship of finding a son. Then his tone shifted. "My son Jonathan has lived a difficult life. To help him learn the ropes, I am officially appointing him as the sole CEO of our primary subsidiary, Montgomery Logistics." A few polite, pitying claps rippled through the room. Near me, a group of trust fund kids started whispering. "Logistics? Isn't that the shell company? That's 50 million in the hole and about to be raided by the FBI.
Haha.
The Rube thinks he's getting a promotion. He's getting a target painted on his back. The Montgomerys are genius. Find a fall guy. Wash your hands clean." I ignored the chatter and looked at the buffet table. The food was molecular. Tiny portions of foam and gel. It wouldn't fill a squirrel. I tapped a waiter on the shoulder. "Where's the kitchen?" 5 minutes later, a thick, aggressive aroma began to waft through the ballroom. Cumin, chili, seared fat. It was a tectonic shift in an atmosphere previously dominated by Chanel No. 5 and expensive bubbly. Everyone stopped talking. They followed their noses to the back of the hall. There I was, Jack Miller, suit jacket tossed aside, sleeves rolled up, standing over a portable industrial grill I borrowed from the kitchen staff. I was expertly flipping skewers of meat, those high-end Wagyu steaks that were supposed to be served as tiny tartars. I'd sliced them into cubes, threaded them on skewers, and was roasting them until they sizzled. The guests were catatonic. Arthur and Julian's faces turned the color of charcoal. Tiffany stormed over to stop the madness. "Jack, have you lost your mind? Look where you are. She wanted to humiliate me. She pointed to a grand piano on a raised dais. If you're Montgomery, show us some class. Go play a concerto. Show the guests your talent. I wiped my greasy hands on a rag.
Piano?
Don't know it. I paused, then grabbed the wireless mic from the podium, but I can hype a crowd. Before she could react, I signaled the DJ, a kid-eyed bribe with $100 and a plate of ribs. A heavy thumping bass beat exploded through the speakers. All right, Hamptons, put your hands up if you like real food. I started a high-energy freestyle hype routine, the kind I use to draw crowds to my stall. Left side move, right side groove. If you're hungry for the truth, I got nothing to prove. Jack Miller's in the house. I'm the new CEO, but I'm keeping it real from head to toe. The steak is sizzling. The flavor's a crime. If you don't eat a skewer, you're wasting your time. Wagyu beef on a stick, that's my soul. While these rich folks are digging themselves in a hole, the room was silent for 3 seconds. Then someone started laughing. Then the whole place erupted. These stuffy billionaires, bored out of their minds by the usual gala routine, started cheering. A heavy-set man in a 3-piece suit, Mr. Sterling, a major player in the city's real estate scene and a known closet foodie, approached the grill. So, how much for a skewer? I handed him one. Mr. Sterling, right on the house.
Tell me what you think.
Sterling took a bite. His eyes practically rolled back in his head. God, that's incredible. The spice, it's perfect. With him leading the way, the elite descended on my grill like a pack of wolves. My barbecue stand was the hit of the Hampton season. Julian was shaking with rage. He lunged forward, pointing a finger at me. Security, get him out of here. He's a thief. He just stole Tiffany's diamond necklace. He was trying to plant evidence. He reached into my pocket to find it. I didn't move. He fumbled in my pocket for a while, but came up empty. Instead, as he pulled his hand back, a glittering diamond necklace fell out of his own pocket and clattered onto the floor. The same necklace that had just disappeared from Tiffany's neck. The room went quiet. I looked at him with mock pity. Julian, man, if you're that broke, you should have just asked for a loan. Stealing from your own fiancé to pay off your gambling debt? That's low. Julian stood there speechless, his reputation incinerating in real time. I looked at his crumbling face and smiled. In this high-stakes game, I was the house. Julian's business partners, the ones he owed money to, finally showed up. That afternoon, 10 black SUVs blocked the entrance to the Montgomery estate. A group of men in dark suits and sunglasses marched in. The leader had a jagged scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw. He looked like he ate gravel for breakfast. Where's Julia Montgomery? He owes the boss $50 million and today's payday. The man's voice was like thunder, making the crystal chandeliers rattle. Arthur and Eleanor turned pale, instinctively ducking behind me. Julian's knees literally gave out. He pointed a shaking finger at me. The debt belongs to the company and he, Jonathan, is the CEO. Talk to him. The scarred man and his crew turned their gaze toward me. They looked ready to tear me apart. I stayed calm. I even took an apple from the fruit bowl and took a crunchy bite. I looked at the leader. He looked familiar. The scar man raised a heavy lead pipe, pointing it at my chest. You Jonathan Montgomery? I nodded. The pipe stopped inches from my face. The man's ferocity vanished, replaced by shock, then pure joy. Holy Jack. Big Jack Miller. He dropped the pipe and pulled me into a bear hug that nearly cracked my spine. Jack, my man, what the hell are you doing here? I've been looking for your cart for a week. The Montgomerys looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Julian's jaw hit the floor. Easy, T-Bone, I wheezed. I'm not as tough as you. This terrifying enforcer, T-Bone Thompson, was my food truck's #1 fan. A VVIP. He used to come by every Friday and eat 20 of my suicide wings, sweating through a suit but loving every second of it. I pointed to the Montgomery behind me. T-Bone, these are my long-lost folks, and that's my brother. They were just telling me that I'm supposed to pay off Julian's debt. T-Bone's face twisted into a snarl. The hell you are? He kicked a designer coffee table, sending expensive porcelain flying. The markers all say Julian Montgomery. I saw him sign it with my own eyes. He tried to screw over my brother Jack. The tables had turned. Arthur and Eleanor were paralyzed. They never imagined the muscle they were afraid of was actually on my side. I walked over to the shivering Julian and patted his shoulder, fueling the fire. T-Bone, don't be too hard on him. He's sensitive. Although he still owes me $60 for that last rack of ribs he ordered and never paid for. T-Bone's eyes turned murderous, stiffing a working man on a $60 tab. All right, time to settle all the books. Julian's screams echoed through the mansion. I finished my apple, thinking to myself, man, this is a good apple. After seeing my connections, Tiffany Vanderbilt's attitude did a 180 degrees flip. The woman who looked at me like dirt was now suddenly my shadow. She found me in a library and tried to hand me a limited edition PC Philippe. Jack, I was so wrong about you. Please, let me make it up to you. She gave me a look that was supposed to be soulful, but just felt oily. I took the watch and waited. Is this waterproof? Tiffany blinked. It's a masterpiece. Of course, it's waterproof. Can I wear it while I'm scrubbing the grease traps on a grill? I asked. Well, no. Then it's useless. I shoved it back at her. Stuff like this just gets in the way when I'm flipping skewers. Tiffany's smile twitched. She didn't give up. The next day, she insisted on rebranding me, taking me to the high-end boutiques on Fifth Avenue. I looked at the price tags, tens of thousands for single items, and just shook my head. Too expensive, and the fabric is too thin. I pointed to a designer shirt with distressed holes. You're charging $5,000 for a shirt that's already falling apart. That's a scam. Tiffany looked like she was going to have an aneurysm, but she forced a laugh, calling it high fashion. She started acting affectionate toward me whenever Julian was around, fixing my collar, leaning in close, giving me adoring looks. Julian was seeing red, his eyes bloodshot with jealousy, but he didn't dare touch me. T-Bone had left 2 of his guys stationed at the gate to look after his buddy Jack. I saw right through Tiffany. I leaned in and whispered, "Are you trying to jump ship, Tiffany? Trading in a sinking Julian for the shiny new model?" Tiffany blushed, but she didn't look away. I realized then that she didn't just want money. She wanted to be on the winning side, and she didn't care who she had to crawl over to get there. Even more ridiculous, Chloe Sinclair joined the fray. Realizing Julian was a dead end, she decided to try her luck with me. The Montgomery house became a circus. Tiffany and Chloe, 2 women who usually spent their time at charity galas and spas, were now competing for my attention in the most pathetic ways. One tried to massage my shoulders while the other tried to bring me drinks. I got fed up. I went to the kitchen and brought back 2 massive crates of raw lamb. You both want to prove your worth? Great. I tossed 2 boxes of bamboo skewers onto the rug. Race to see who can skewer these. Whoever does it fastest and cleanest gets to be the head server of my next pop-up. They both stared at the raw meat in horror. But under my do-it-or-get-out glare, these 2 pampered socialites knelt on the multi-thousand-dollar rug and started wrestling with raw fat and wooden sticks. I shook my head. Their technique was abysmal. No wonder Julian was failing. His circle had 0 work ethic. Julian hadn't totally surrendered. He knew he couldn't win a fight, so he tried to trap me in a boardroom. He came to me with a golden opportunity, an offshore investment project that he claimed would not only clear the $50 million debt, but make the family a fortune. He put on a performance worthy of an Oscar, crying about redemption and saving the family name. I took the contract, acting like a confused hick. A lot of big words here. My head hurts just looking at it. Julian smirked, thinking he'd finally caught the fish. He didn't know that as soon as he left, I snapped photos of every page and sent them to an old friend, a brilliant lawyer I used to feed for free back at the night market. The next day, at the official signing ceremony, the investors and Julian were all waiting for my signature. I walked onto the stage, but didn't touch their contract. Instead, I pulled out a different stack of papers. Listen, the other contract was too fancy for me, so I rewrote it using grocery store logic. I cleared my throat and addressed the room. This contract is like going to the market for a head of lettuce. The guy tells me it's organic imported lettuce for $500 a head. But when I look at the roots, I see the same mud from my own backyard. And then I continued. The guy says if the lettuce rots, I have to pay him double. That's not a deal. That's a shakedown. I laid out the legal traps in plain English. The investors turned white. They realized I wasn't just a grill guy. I was a guy who'd spent his life not getting cheated by the smartest scammers on the street. Then, if they're down to photos of Julian meeting these investors in private, taking kickbacks to sell out his own family's remaining assets. Worst of all, this led to a salesman paying my brother under the table. We call that eating from the bowl and spitting in the pot. The evidence was undeniable. Julian collapsed into his chair. Arthur Montgomery lunged at him, nearly having a stroke on the spot. I looked at Arthur. Dad, Julian's going to run this place into the ground. Why don't you just give me my 20% stake now? Let me handle things. Eleanor tried to play the family card. Jonathan, we're a family. Business is business, Mom. I interrupted. And you really don't want me posting these kickback photos on the company Slack, do you? By the end of the hour, I didn't just avoid the trap. I walked away with 20% of Montgomery Global. Julian tried to play the academic shark, but he got eaten by a guy who knew how to handle a real fire. Julian was finished, and Chloe Sinclair knew it was time to find a new life raft, but she wasn't going to leave empty-handed. One night, I got up to use the bathroom and heard a noise in the study. I crept over and saw that several priceless Ming vases were missing from their pedestals. I didn't make a sound. I just went to the back door of the estate. Sure enough, Chloe was there, dragging a massive suitcase toward a waiting Uber. I stepped into the light. Going somewhere, Chloe? It's a bit late for vacation. She jumped but recovered quickly. She tried the seductress act one last time, tossing her hair and pouting. Jack, I just needed some space. Let me go, and I'll make it worth your while later. I pointed at the suitcase. That vase in there. The curator said it's worth $3 million. I held out my hand. That's a lot of skewers. Put it down. Her face went cold. Just then, Julian burst out of the house. He noticed she was gone and followed her. When he saw the suitcase full of his family's heirlooms, his heart broke for the final time. Chloe, you were leaving? You were stealing from us. Chloe realized the game was up and dropped the sweetheart. Act entirely? She spat at his feet. Leave? I'd be a fool to stay with a loser like you. Look at yourself, Julian. You're a pathetic coward who can't even protect his own shadow. Julian was devastated, sobbing on the gravel like a child. I stood there watching the drama and handed him a tissue.
Here, man. Don't get snot on the driveway.
It's hard to power wash out. Then I played the recording of her conspiracy one more time, loud and clear. This recording plus the stolen goods in that bag. It's enough to put you away for a long time, Chloe. Leave the bag. Leave the gifts Julian gave you and get out. Or I call the cops. Chloe left with nothing but the clothes on her back, slinking away like a stray dog. I patted Julian on the back. To be honest, your taste in women is even worse than your taste in investments. Secrets have a way of getting out. The scandal of Julian's gambling debts and the gala disaster hit the press. Someone, probably me, leaked the videos of the debt collectors. Montgomery Global's stock plummeted. The board of directors descended on the estate like sharks smelling blood. They were screaming at Arthur, demanding his resignation. Arthur, your son ruined us. The stock is worth pennies. You have to fix this. Arthur did what he always did. He faked a heart attack. My heart. I can't breathe. The door to the boardroom swung open. I walked in wearing a tank top, gym shorts, and my flip-flops, picking my teeth with a splinter of wood. A director sneered. Who is this? Get him out of here. Arthur looked up, gasping.
He's my son, Jonathan.
He's a major shareholder. The board laughed. The grill guy? Does he even know how to read a P&L statement? I ignored them, sat at the head of the table, put my feet up, and tossed a crumpled piece of paper onto the table. Here's the Montgomery recovery and pivot plan. I looked at them, or as I like to call it, the street food marketing strategy. A director looked at the paper and turned red. This is absurd. You want to turn our high-end restaurant chain into down-to-earth barbecue joints, he yelled. And eat a burger, get a fractional share promotions? You think this is a game? I cleaned my ear with a finger. The company is dying. You got a better plan?
No.
Then sit down and shut up. We're doing it my way. It's better to try something crazy than to just sit here and wait for the funeral. They had no choice. That night, I set up a ring light and started a live stream from the middle of the Montgomery ballroom. What's up, guys? It's Big Jack Miller, the new CEO of Montgomery Global. My brother blew the budget on Baccarat, so we're having a fire sale to save the company. Order a rack of ribs tonight. And not only do you get half off, but I'm raffling off 10 blocks of company stock to the viewers. The contrast between my street personality and the gold leaf mansion behind me was viral gold. We hit 100,000 viewers in 10 minutes. Tiffany Vanderbilt even joined in, wearing a sequin gown and acting as my hype girl, handing me skewers while giving the camera bedroom eyes. Jack's so hot. This is the ultimate eat the rich vibe. I'm buying 50 racks just for the stock. The stream was a massive hit. The next morning, to the shock of every Wall Street analyst, Montgomery Global stock hit the daily limit. It was back in the green. I didn't think Julian could get any stupider. But after I stripped him of his title, his money, and his fiancée, he went for the nuclear option. Kidnapping. He kidnapped my father, or at least the man he thought was my father, and called me, sounding completely unhinged. Jack, how about your old man? If you want to see him alive, sign over your shares and get out of the state. I hung up, my expression flat. The man he kidnapped was Old Man Murphy, my former landlord from the city. A cranky guy with a bad leg. I liked him, but he definitely wasn't my father. I called T-Bone. T-Bone grabbed the crew. We got a situation. Half an hour later, I rolled up to a derelict warehouse with 20 of T-Bone's best guys. Inside, Julian was waving a kitchen knife at Old Man Murphy. But the vibe was weird. Murphy wasn't scared. He was looking at Julian with utter disgust. Look, kid, if you're going to roast those sweet potatoes over an open flame, you got to wrap them in foil first. You're just burning the skin and leaving the middle raw. Use your head. He was coaching his kidnapper on cooking techniques. Julian looked like he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. I kicked the door open. Julian, you got the wrong guy. Julian's eyes were bloodshot. Jack, you're finally here. I pointed at Murphy. That guy owes me 3 months of back rent. You want to kidnap him?
Fine.
But you got to collect a rent for me first.
Arg.
Julian screamed. Why won't any of you follow the script? You're supposed to be crying. You're supposed to be begging me. He lost it. He lunged at me with a knife. I didn't move. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out a handful of my secret weapon, extra-strength Hellfire chili cumin powder. As he got close, I threw the powder directly into his eyes.
Gah.
My eyes. It burns. Julian collapsed, clutching his face. T-Bone and the guys swarmed him in seconds. The police sirens were already wailing outside. I'd called them on the way. As I hauled Julian away in handcuffs, I waved. Good luck in a big house, Julian. When you get out, come find me. I'll teach you how to grill. It's better than kidnapping. The Montgomery name was dragged through the mud, but under my leadership, the company was soaring. Arthur and Eleanor looked at me with a new kind of emotion, pure, unadulterated desperation. They prepared a reconciliation dinner. They were both in tears, apologizing profusely. Jonathan, we were so wrong. We were blinded by our love for Julian, but you're the real future of this family. They tried the blood is thicker than water routine. Eleanor even suggested, sweetheart, you're so young. Managing a company is hard. Why don't you sign the shares back to us for safekeeping until you're more experienced? Tiffany sat there nodding, looking at me with fake devotion. I finished my steak, wiped my mouth, and smiled. You done acting? The room went silent. When you wanted me to go to prison for Julian, was I your sweetheart? Then I asked. When you tried to trick me into signing away my life, was I the future? I pulled a folder from my bag. By the way, I bought up all the floating shares on the open market last week. I own 51%. I'm the majority owner. Arthur and Eleanor looked like they'd seen a ghost. As of tomorrow, you two are retiring. You'll be moved to a modest condo in Florida. I'll have the company send you a $3,000 monthly allowance, just like Julian promised me compensation for my help. I stood up to leave. Tiffany grabbed my arm, begging. Jack, I love you. I was just confused. Give me another chance. I shook her off. To be honest, Tiffany, I like you better when you were a stuck-up brat who hated me. This loyal girlfriend act is just boring. I walked out to the sound of their collective screaming. Moral blackmail doesn't work on a guy who grew up on the streets. I don't have morals in their world. I have results. I hired a team of professional CEOs to run the day-to-day. My lawyer friend became the general counsel. My street food pivot turned Montgomery Global into a multi-billion-dollar empire of high-quality, accessible dining. But I found that wearing a suit in a glass office wasn't for me. I missed the smoke. I went back to my old neighborhood and opened Big Jack's flagship barbecue. It wasn't a cart anymore. It was a high-end outdoor eatery with a waiting list a month long. T-Bone Thompson went legit and became my head of security. Tiffany and Chloe occasionally show up in their luxury cars, standing in line for hours just to get a taste of my legendary spicy kidneys. They didn't get the man, and now they have to pay full price for the food. One night, a news reporter came by for an interview. Mr. Miller, as a billionaire mogul, why do you still stand here over a hot grill? Don't you think it's beneath your status? I sprinkled some cumin over the flames, giving the camera a grin. High society drama. That's nothing compared to getting the char right on these ribs. As the sun set, a Maybach, even more expensive than a Rolls-Royce, pulled up. An elderly butler in a tuxedo and white gloves stepped out and bowed deeply. Master Jack, we finally found you. I am a major domo for your maternal grandfather, Mr. Cyrus Sterling, the wealthiest man on the planet. It turns out you aren't just a Montgomery. You are the sole heir to the Sterling global fortune. I didn't even look up as I bagged a set of wings. Beat it, pal. Can't you see I'm busy? Don't mess with my flow. The butler stood there stunned. I took a deep breath of the cumined air. Now that I thought is the smell of freedom. Story complete.